Camino Real by Tennessee Williams. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood where the straight way was lost. Canto the First, Dante's Inferno. For Elia Kazan. Foreword. Footnote. Written prior to the Broadway premiere of Camino Real and published in the New York Times on Sunday, March 15th, 1953. It is amazing and frightening how completely one's whole being becomes absorbed in the making of a play. It is almost as if you are frantically constructing another world while the world that you live in dissolves beneath your feet, and that your survival depends on completing this construction at least 1 second before the old habitation collapses. More than any other work that I have done, this play has seemed to me like the construction of another world, a separate existence. Of course, it is nothing more nor less than my conception of the time and world that I live in, and its people are mostly archetypes of certain basic attitudes and qualities, with those mutations that would occur if they had continued along the road to this hypothetical terminal point in it. A convention of the play is existence outside of time in a place of no specific locality. If you regard it that way, I suppose it becomes an elaborate allegory. But in New Haven, we opened directly across the street from a movie theater that was showing Peter Pan in Technicolor, and it did not seem altogether inappropriate to me. Fairy tales nearly always have some simple moral lesson of good and evil. But that is not the secret of their fascination anymore, I hope, than the philosophical import that might be distilled from the fantasies of Camino Real is the principal element of its appeal. To me, the appeal of this work is its unusual degree of freedom. When it began to get underway, I felt a new sensation of release, as if I could ride out like a tenor sax taking the breaks in a Dixieland combo or a piano in a bop session. You may call it self-indulgence, but I was not doing it merely for myself. I could not have felt a purely private thrill of release unless I had hope of sharing this experience with lots and lots of audiences to come. My desire was to give these audiences my own sense of something wild and unrestricted that ran like water in the mountain, or clouds changing shape in a gale, or the continually dissolving and transforming images of a dream. This sort of freedom is not chaos nor anarchy. On the contrary, it is the result of painstaking design, and in this work I have given more conscious attention to form and construction than I have in any work before. Freedom is not achieved simply by working freely. Elia Kazan was attracted to this work mainly, I believe, for the same reason, its freedom and mobility of form. I know that we have kept saying the word flight to each other as if the play were merely an abstraction of the impulse to fly, and most of the work out of town, his in staging, mine in cutting and revising, has been with this impulse in mind, the achievement of a continual flow. Speech after speech and bit after bit that were nice in themselves have been remorselessly blasted out of the script and its staging wherever they seemed to obstruct or divert this flow. There have been plenty of indications already that this play will exasperate and confuse a certain number of people, which we hope is not so large as the number it is likely to please. At each performance, a number of people have stamped out of the auditorium, with little regard for those whom they have had to crawl over, almost as if the building had caught on fire. And there have been sibilant noises on the way out and demands for money back if the cashier was foolish enough to remain in his box. I am at a loss to explain this phenomenon, and if I am being facetious about one thing, I am being quite serious about another when I say that I had never for 1 minute supposed that the play would seem obscure and confusing to anyone who was willing to meet it even less than halfway. It was a costly production, And for this reason, I had to read it aloud, together with a few of the actors on one occasion, before large groups of prospective backers, before the funds to produce it were in the till. It was only then that I came up against the disconcerting surprise that some people would think that the play needed clarification. My attitude is intransigent. I still don't agree that it needs any explanation. Some poet has said that a poem should not mean but be. Of course, a play is not a poem. Not even a poetic play has quite the same license as a poem. But to go to Camino Real with the inflexible demands of a logician is unfair to both parties. In Philadelphia, a young man from a literary periodical saw the play and then cross examined me about all its dreamlike images. He had made a list of them while he watched the play, and afterward at my hotel he brought out the list and asked me to explain the meaning of each one. I can't deny that I use a lot of those things called symbols, but being a self defensive creature, I say that symbols are nothing but the natural speech of drama. We all have in our conscious and unconscious minds a great vocabulary of images. And I think all human communication is based on those images, as are our dreams. And a symbol in a play has only one legitimate purpose, which is to say a thing more directly and simply and beautifully than it could be said in words. I hate writing that is a parade of images for the sake of images. I hate it so much that I close a book in disgust when it keeps on saying one thing is like another. I even get disgusted with poems that make nothing but comparisons between one thing and another. But I repeat that symbols, when used respectfully, are the purest language of plays. Sometimes it would take page after tedious page of exposition to put across an idea that can be said with an object or a gesture on the lighted stage. To take one case in point, the battered portmanteau of Jacques Casanova is hurled from the balcony of a luxury hotel when his remittance check fails to come through. While the portmanteau is still in the air, he shouts, "Careful, I have..." And when it has crashed to the street, he continues, "Fragile mementos." I suppose that is a symbol. At least it is an object used to express as directly and vividly as possible certain things which could be said in pages of dull talk. As for those patrons who departed before the final scene, I offer myself this tentative bit of solace, that these theater-goers may be a little domesticated in their theatrical tastes. A cage represents security as well as confinement to a bird that has grown used to being in it. And when a theatrical work kicks over the traces with such apparent insouciance, security seems challenged. And instead of participating in its sense of freedom, one out of a certain number of playgoers will rush back out to the more accustomed implausibility of the street he lives on. To modify this effect of complaisance, I would like to admit to you quite frankly that I can't say with any personal conviction that I have written a good play. I only know that I have felt a release in this work which I wanted you to feel with me. Tennessee Williams. There's an afterword, but I think I should say it after. I'm not sure. Sorry to break it up, but I'm trying to decide whether I should read this. Yeah, I'll read it. Afterward. Once in a while, someone will say to me that he would rather wait for a play to come out as a book than see a live performance of it, where he would be distracted from its true values, if it has any, by so much that is mere spectacle and sensation, and must be meretricious and vulgar. There are plays meant for reading. I have read them. I have read the works of thinking playwrights as distinguished from us who are permitted only to feel, and probably read them earlier and appreciated them as much as those who invoke their names nowadays, like the incantation of Aristophanes' frogs. But the incontinent blaze of a live theater, a theater meant for seeing and for feeling, has never been and never will be extinguished by a bucket brigade of critics, new or old, bearing vessels that range from cut glass punch bowl to Haviland teacup. And in my dissident opinion, a play and a book is only the shadow of a play and not even a clear shadow of it. Those who did not like Camino Real on the stage will not be likely to form a higher opinion of it in print. For of all the works I have written, this one was meant most for the vulgarity of performance. The printed script of a play is hardly more than the architect's blueprint of a house not yet built or built and destroyed. The color, the grace, and levitation, the structural pattern and motion, the quick interplay of live beings suspended like fitful lightning in a cloud, these things are the play, not words on paper, nor thoughts and ideas of an author, those shabby things snatched off basement counters at Gimbel's. My own creed as a playwright is fairly close to that expressed by the painter in Shaw's play, The Doctor's Dilemma. I believe in Michelangelo, Velázquez, and Rembrandt. In the might of design, the mystery of color, the redemption of all things by beauty everlasting, and the message of art that has made these hands blessed. Amen. How much art his hands were blessed with, or how much mine are, I don't know. But that art is a blessing is certain, and that it contains its message is also certain. And I feel, as the painter did, that the message lies in those abstract beauties of form and color and line, to which I would add light and motion. And these following pages are only the formula by which a play could exist. Dynamic is a word in disrepute at the moment, and so I suppose the word organic. But those terms still define the dramatic values that I value most, and which I value more as they are more deprecated by the ones self-appointed to save what they have never known. Tennessee Williams, June 1st, 1953. Prologue. As the curtain rises, on an almost lightless stage, there is a loud singing of wind, accompanied by distant measured reverberations, like pounding surf or distant shell fire. Above the ancient wall that backs the set and the perimeter of mountains visible above the wall are flickers of a white radiance, as though daybreak were a white bird caught in a net and struggling to rise. The plaza is seen fitfully by this light. It belongs to a tropical seaport that bears a confusing but somehow harmonious resemblance to such widely scattered ports as Tangier, Havana, Veracruz, Casablanca, Shanghai, New Orleans. On stage left is the luxury side of the street, containing the facade of the Siete Mares Hotel, and its low terrace on which are a number of glass-topped white iron tables and chairs. In the downstairs, there is a great bay window in which are seen a pair of elegant dummies, one seated, one standing behind, looking out into the plaza with painted smiles. Upstairs is a small balcony, and behind it a large window exposing a wall on which is hung a phoenix painted on silk. This should be softly lighted now and then in the play, since resurrections are so much a part of its meaning. Opposite the hotel is Skid Row, which contains the Gypsy's gaudy stall, the Loan Shark's establishment with a window containing a variety of pawned articles, and the Ritz Men Only, which is a Fleabag hotel or flophouse, and which has a practical window above its downstairs entrance in which a bum will appear from time to time to deliver appropriate or contrapuntal song titles. Upstage is a great flight of stairs that mount the ancient wall to a sort of archway that leads out into terra incognita, as it is called in the play, a wasteland between the walled town and the distant perimeter of snow-topped mountains. Downstage right and left are a pair of arches which give entrance to dead-end streets. Immediately after the curtain rises, a shaft of blue light is thrown down a central aisle of the theater, and in this light, advancing from the back of the house, appears Don Quixote de la Mancha, dressed like an old desert rat. As he enters the aisle, he shouts, "Hola!" in a cracked old voice which is still full of energy, and is answered by another voice which is impatient and tired, that of his squire Sancho Panza. Stumbling with a fatigue which is only physical, the old knight comes down the aisle, and Sancho follows a couple of yards behind him, loaded down with equipment that ranges from a medieval shield to a military canteen or thermos bottle. Shouts are exchanged between them. Quixote, ranting above the wind in a voice which is nearly as old. "Blue is the color of distance." Sancho, warily behind him. "Yes, distance is blue." Quixote. "Blue is also the color of nobility." Sancho. "Yes, nobility is blue." Quixote. "Blue is the color of distance and nobility, and that's why an old knight should always have somewhere about him a bit of blue ribbon." He jostles the elbow of an aisle sitter as he staggers with fatigue. He mumbles an apology. Sancho. "Yes, a bit of blue ribbon." Quixote. "A bit of faded blue ribbon tucked away in whatever remains of his armor, or borne on the tip of his lance, his unconquerable lance. It serves to remind an old knight of distance that he has gone and distance he has yet to go." Sancho mutters the Spanish word for excrement as several pieces of rusty armor fall into the aisle. Quixote has now arrived at the foot of the steps onto the forestage. He pauses there as if wandering out of or into a dream. Sancho draws up, clanking behind him. Mr. Gutman, a lordly fat man wearing a linen suit and a pith helmet, appears dimly on the balcony of the Siete Mares, a white cockatoo on his wrist. The bird cries out harshly. Gutman. "Hush, Aurora." Quixote. It also reminds an old knight of that green country he lived in, which was the youth of his heart, before such singing words as "truth." Sancho, panting. "Truth." Quixote. "Valor." Sancho. "Valor." Quixote, elevating his lance. "Devoir." Sancho. "Devoir." Quixote, turned into the meaningless mumble of some old monk hunched over cold mutton at supper. Gutman alerts a pair of guards in the plaza, who cross with red lanterns to either side of the proscenium, where they lower black and white striped barrier gates as if the proscenium marked a frontier. One of them, with a hand on his holster, advances toward the pair on the steps. Guard. "Viens aquí?" Sancho hangs back, but Quixote stalks up to the barrier gate. The guard turns a flashlight on his long and exceedingly grave red face, frisks him casually for concealed weapons, examines a rusty old knife and tosses it contemptuously away. "Sus papeles, sus documentos." Quixote fumblingly produces some tattered old papers from the lining of his hat. Gutman, impatiently. "Who is it?" Guard. "An old desert rat named Quixote." Gutman. "Oh, expected. Let him in." The guards raise the barrier gate, and one sits down to smoke on the terrace. Sancho hangs back still. A dispute takes place on the forestage and steps into the aisle. Quixote. "Forward." Sancho. "Oh, no, I know this place." He produces a crumpled parchment. "Here it is on the chart. Look, it says here, continue until you come to the square of a walled town, which is the end of the Camino Real, and the beginning of the Camino Real. Halt there," it says, "and turn back, traveler, for the spring of humanity has gone dry in this place." And Quixote. He snatches the chart from him and reads the rest of the inscription. "There are no birds in the country except wild birds that are tamed and kept in..." He holds the chart close to his nose. "Cages." Sancho, urgently. "Let's go back to La Mancha." Quixote. "Forward." Sancho. The time has come for retreat. Quixote. The time for retreat never comes. Sancho. I'm going back to La Mancha. He dumps the nightly equipment into the orchestra pit. Quixote. Without me? Sancho, bustling up the aisle. With you or without you, old tireless and tiresome master? Quixote, imploringly. Sancho. Sancho near the top of the aisle. I'm going back to La Mancha. He disappears as the blue light in the aisle dims out. The guard puts out his cigarette and wanders out of the plaza. The wind moans, and Gutman laughs softly as the ancient knight enters the plaza with such a desolate air. Quixote, looking about the plaza. Lonely. To his surprise, the word is echoed softly by almost unseen figures huddled below the stairs and against the wall of the town. Quixote leans upon his lance and observes with a wry smile. When so many are lonely as seem to be lonely, it would be inexcusably selfish to be lonely alone. He shakes out a dusty blanket. Shadowy arms extend toward him and voices murmur. Voice. Sleep. 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 Quixote, arranging his blanket. Yes, I'll sleep for a while. I'll sleep and dream for a while against the wall of this town. A mandolin or guitar plays the Nightingale of France. And my dream will be a pageant, a mask in which old meanings will be remembered and possibly new ones discovered. And when I wake from this sleep, in this disturbing pageant of a dream, I'll choose one among its shadows to take along with me in the place of Sancho. He blows his nose between his fingers and wipes them on his shirt tail. For new companions are not as familiar as old ones, but all the same, they're old ones with only slight differences of face and figure, which may or may not be improvements, and it would be selfish of me to be lonely alone. He stumbles down the incline into the pit below the stairs, where most of the street people huddle beneath awnings of open stalls. The white cockatoo squawks. Gutman. Hush, Aurora. Quixote. And tomorrow, at this same hour, which we call madrugada, the loveliest of all words, except the word alba. And that word also means daybreak. Yes, at daybreak tomorrow I will go on from here with a new companion, and this old bit of blue ribbon to keep me in mind of distance that I have gone and distance I have yet to go, and also to keep me in mind of the cockatoo cries wildly. Quixote nods as if in agreement with the outcry and folds himself into his blanket below the great stairs. Gutman, stroking the cockatoo's crest. Be still, Aurora. I know it's morning, Aurora. Daylight turns the plaza silver and shadowy gold and slowly gold. The vendors rise beneath white awnings of stalls. The gypsy stall opens. A tall, courtly figure in his late middle years, Jacques Casanova, crosses from the Siete Mares to the Loan Sharks, removing a silver snuff box from his pocket as Gutman speaks. His costume, like that of all the legendary characters in the play, except perhaps Quixote, is generally modern, but with the vestigial touches of the period to which he was actually related. The cane and the snuff box and perhaps a brocaded vest may be sufficient to give this historical suggestion in Casanova's case. He bears his hawk-like head with a sort of anxious pride on most occasions, a pride maintained under a steadily mounting pressure. It's morning, and after morning. It's afternoon, haha. And now I must go downstairs to announce the beginning of that old wanderer's dream. He withdraws from the balcony as an old Prudence du Vernoy stumbles out of the hotel, as if not yet quite awake from an afternoon siesta. Chattering with beads and bracelets, she wanders vaguely down into the plaza, raising a faded green silk parasol, damp henna-streaked hair slipping under a monstrous hat of faded silk roses. She is searching for a lost poodle. Prudence. Trique? Trique? Jacques comes out of the loan sharks, replacing his case angrily in his pocket. Jacques. Why, I'd rather give it to a street beggar. This case is a boucheron. I won it at a faro at the summer palace at Scarsko Cielo in the winter of... The loan shark slams the door. Jacques glares, then shrugs and starts across the plaza. Old Prudence is crouched over the filthy gray bundle of a dying mongrel by the fountain. Trique. Oh, Trique. The gypsy son Abdullah watches, giggling. Jacques, reproving. It is a terrible thing for an old woman to outlive her dogs. He crosses to Prudence and gently disengages the animal from her grasp. Madame, that is not Trique. Prudence. When I woke up, she wasn't in her basket. Jacques. Sometimes we sleep too long in the afternoon, and when we wake, we find things changed, Signora. Prudence. Oh, you're Italian. Jacques. I am from Venice, Signora. Prudence. Ah, Venice, city of pearls. I saw you last night on the terrace dining with... Oh, I'm so worried about her. I'm an old friend of hers. Perhaps she's mentioned me to you. Prudence Duvernoy? I was her best friend in the old days in Paris, but now she's forgotten so much. I hope you have influence with her. A waltz of Camille's time in Paris is heard. I want you to give her a message from a certain wealthy old gentleman that she met at one of those watering places she used to go to for her health. She resembled his daughter who died of consumption, and so he adored Camille, lavished everything on her. What did she do? Took a young lover who hadn't a couple of pennies to rub together, disinherited by his father because of her. Oh, you can't do that. Not now. Not anymore. You've got to be realistic on the Camino Real. Gutman has come out on the terrace. He announces quietly. Gutman. Block 1 on the Camino Real. Block 1. Prudence continuing. Yes, you've got to be practical on it. We'll give her this message, please, sir. He wants her back on any terms whatsoever. Her speech gathers furious momentum. Her evenings will be free. He wants only her mornings. Mornings are hard on old men because their hearts beat slowly, and he wants her only mornings. Well, that's how it should be. A sensible arrangement. Elderly gentlemen have to content themselves with the lady's spare time before supper. Isn't that so? Of course so. And so I told him Camille isn't well. She requires delicate care. Has many debts. Creditors storm her door. How much does she owe? He asked me, and did I do some lightning mathematics. Jewels in pawn, I told him. Pearls, rings, necklaces, bracelets, and diamond eardrops are in pawn. Horses put up for sale at the public auction. Jacques, appalled by this torrent. Signora, all of these things are... Prudence, what? Jacques, dreams. Gutman laughs. A woman sings at a distance. Prudence, continuing with less assurance. You're not so young as I thought when I saw you last night on the terrace by candlelight on the... I bet there is one old fountain in this plaza that hasn't gone dry. She pokes him obscenely. He recoils. Gutman laughs. Jacques starts away, but she seizes his arm again, and the torrent of speech continues. Prudence. Wait, listen. Her candle is burning low. But how can you tell? She might have a lingering end, and charity hospitals? Why, you might as well take a flying leap into the street cleaner's barrel. Well, I've told her not to live in a dream. A dream is nothing to live in. Why, It's gone like a... Don't let her elegance fool you. That girl has done the Camino in carriages, but she has also done it on foot. She knows every stone the Camino is paved with. So tell her this. You tell her. She won't listen to me. Times and conditions have undergone certain changes since we were friends in Paris. And now we dismiss young lovers with skins of silk and eyes like a child's first prayer. We put them away as lightly as we put away white gloves meant only for summer, and pick up a pair of black ones suitable for winter. The singing voice rises, then subsides. Jacques, excuse me, madam. He tears himself from her grasp and rushes into the Siete Mares. Prudence, dazed to Gutman. What block is this? Gutman. Block 1. Prudence. I didn't hear the announcement. Gutman, coldly. Well, now you do. Olympe comes out of the lobby with a pale orange parasol like a floating moon. Olympe. Oh, there you are. I've looked for you high and low. Mostly low. They float vaguely out into the dazzling plaza as though a capricious wind took them, finally drifting through the Moorish arch downstage right. The song dies out. Gutman, lighting a thin cigar. Block 2 on the Camino Real. Block 2. After Gutman's announcement, a hoarse cry is heard. A figure in rags, skin blackened by the sun, tumbles crazily down the steep alley to the plaza. He turns about, blindly murmuring, "Adonde la fuente?" He stumbles against the hideous old prostitute, Rosita, who grins horribly and whispers something to him, hitching up her ragged, filthy skirt. He gives him a jocular push toward the fountain. He falls upon his belly and thrusts his hands into the dried-up basin. Then he staggers to his feet with a despairing cry. The survivor. La fuente está seca. Rosita laughs madly, but the other street people moan. A dry gourd rattles. Rosita. The fountain is dry, but there's plenty to drink in this Siete Mares. She shoves him toward the hotel. The proprietor, Gutman, steps out, smoking a thin cigar, fanning himself with a palm leaf. As the survivor advances, Gutman whistles. A man in military dress comes out upon the low terrace. Officer, go back. The survivor stumbles forward. The officer fires at him. He lowers his hands to his stomach, turns slowly about with a lost expression, looking up at the sky, and stumbles toward the fountain. During the scene that follows, until the entrance of La Madrecita and her son, the survivor drags himself slowly about the concrete rim of the fountain, almost entirely ignored as a dying pariah dog in a starving country. Jacques Casanova comes out upon the terrace of the Siete Mares. Now he passes the hotel proprietor's impassive figure, descending a step beneath and a little in advance of him and without looking at him. Jacques, with infinite weariness and disgust. What has happened? Gutman, serenely. We have entered the second in a progress of 16 blocks in the Camino Real. It's 5 o'clock. That angry old lion, the sun, looked back once and growled, and then went switching his tail toward the cool shade of the Sierras. Our guests have taken their afternoon siestas. The survivor has come out upon the forestage. Now, not like a dying man, but like a shy speaker who has forgotten the opening line of his speech. He is only a little crouched over with a hand obscuring the red stain over his belly. 2 or 3 street people wander about calling their wares. Tacos, tacos, fritos, loteria, loteria. Rosita shuffles around, calling, love, love, pulling down the filthy décolletage of her blouse to show more of her sagging bosom. The survivor arrives at the top of the stairs, descending into the orchestra of the theater, and hangs on to it, looking out reflectively as a man over the rail of a boat coming into a somewhat disturbingly strange harbor. Gutman, continuing. They suffer from extreme fatigue, our guests at the Siete Mares. All of them have a degree or two of fever. Questions are passed amongst them like something illicit and shameful, like counterfeit money, or drugs, or indecent postcards. He leans forward and whispers, "What is this place? Where are we? What is the meaning of shh?" Haha. The survivor very softly to the audience. I once had a pony named Pito. He caught in his nostrils the scent of thunderstorms coming even before the clouds had crossed the Sierra. Vendor. Tacos, tacos fritos. Rosita. Love, love. Lady Mulligan. To waiter on terrace. Are you sure no one called me? I was expecting a call. Gutman, smiling. My guests are confused and exhausted, but at this hour they pull themselves together and drift downstairs on the wings of gin in the lift. They drift into the public rooms and exchange notes again on fashionable courtiers and custom tailors, restaurants, vintages of wine, hairdressers, plastic surgeons, girls and young men susceptible to offers. There is a hum of light conversation and laughter within. Hear them? They're exchanging notes. Jacques striking the terrace with his cane. I asked you what has happened in the plaza. Gutman. Oh, in the plaza. Happenings in the plaza don't concern us. Jacques. I heard shots fired. Gutman. Shots were fired to remind you of your good fortune in staying here. The public fountains have gone dry, you know, but the Siete Mares was erected over the only perpetual, never dried up spring in the Tierra Caliente. And of course, that advantage has to be protected, sometimes by marital law. The guitar resumes. The survivor. When Pito, my pony, was born, he stood on his four legs at once and accepted the world. He was wiser than I. Vendor. Fritos, fritos, tacos. Rosita. Love. The survivor. When Pito was 1 year old, he was wiser than God. A wind sings across the plaza. A dry gourd rattles. Pito, Pito. The Indian boys call after him, trying to stop the wind. The survivor's head sags forward. He sits down as slowly as an old man on a park bench. Jacques strikes the terrace again with his cane and starts toward the survivor. The guard seizes his elbow. Jacques. Don't put your hand on me. Guard. Stay here. Gutman. Remain on the terrace, please, Senor Casanova. Jacques. Fiercely. Cognac. The waiter whispers to Gutman. Gutman chuckles. Gutman. The maitre d' tells me that your credit has been discontinued in the restaurant and bar. He says that he has enough of your tabs to pave the terrace with. Jacques. What a piece of impertinence. I told the man that the letter that I'm expecting has been delayed in the mail. The postal service in this country is fantastically disorganized, and you know it. You also know that Mademoiselle Gautier will guarantee my tabs. Gutman. Then let her pick them up at dinner tonight if you're hungry. Jacques. I'm not accustomed to this kind of treatment on the Camino Real. Gutman. Oh, you'll be. After a single night at the Ritz Men only. That's where you'll have your patronage if the letter containing the remittance check doesn't arrive tonight. Jacques. I assure you that I shall do nothing of the sort, tonight or ever. Gutman. Watch out, old hawk. The wind is ruffling your feathers. Jacques sinks, trembling, into a chair. Give him a thimble of brandy before he collapses. Fury is a luxury of the young. Their veins are resilient, but his are brittle. Jacques. Here I sit, submitting to insult for a thimble of brandy, while directly in front of me, the singer La Madrecita enters the plaza. She is a blind woman led by a ragged young man. The waiter brings Jacques a brandy. A man in the plaza dies like a pariah dog. I take the brandy. I sip it. My heart is too tired to break. My heart is too tired to break. La Madrecita chants softly. She slowly raises her arm to point at the survivor crouched on the steps from the plaza. Gutman, suddenly. Give me the phone. Connect me with the palace. Get me the Generalissimo. Quick, quick, quick. The survivor rises feebly and shuffles very slowly toward the extended arms of the little blind one. Generalissimo? Gutman speaking. Hello, sweetheart. There has been a little incident in the plaza. You know that party of young explorers that attempted to cross the desert on foot? Well, one of them's come back. He was very thirsty. He found the fountain dry. He started toward the hotel. He was politely advised to advance no further, but he disregarded this advice. Action had to be taken, and now, that old blind woman they call La Madrecita, she's come into the plaza with a man called the Dreamer. Survivor. Donde? The Dreamer. Aquí! Gutman continuing. You remember those two. I once mentioned them to you. You said, they're harmless dreamers and they're loved by the people. What? I asked you, is harmless about a dreamer and what? I asked you, is harmless about the love of the people. Revolution only needs good dreamers who remember their dreams, and the love of the people belongs safely only to you, their Generalissimo. Yes. Now the blind woman has recovered her sight and is extending her arms to the wounded survivor, and the man with the guitar is leading him to her. The described action is being enacted. Wait one moment. There's a possibility that the forbidden word may be spoken. Yes, the forbidden word is about to be spoken. The dreamer places an arm about the blinded survivor and cries out. The dreamer. Hermano. The cry is repeated like springing fire, and a loud murmur sweeps the crowd. They push forward with cupped hands extended and the gasping cries of starving people at the sight of bread. 2 military guards herd them back under the colonnades with clubs and drawn revolvers. La Madrecita chants softly with her blind eyes lifted. A guard starts toward her. The people shout, no! La Madrecita chanting. Rojo hasta el sol, rojo hasta el sol de sangre, blanca hasta la luna de miedo. The crowd makes a turning motion. Gutman to the waiter. Put up the ropes. Velvet ropes are strung very quickly about the terrace of the Siete Mares. They are like the ropes on decks of steamers in rough waters. Gutman shouts into the phone again. The word was spoken. The crowd is agitated. Hang on. He lays down instrument. Jacques, hoarsely shaken. He said, Hermano. That's the word for brother. Gutman, calmly. Yes, the most dangerous word in any human tongue is the word for brother. It's inflammatory. I don't suppose it can be struck out of the language altogether, but it must be reserved for strictly private usage in back of soundproof walls. Otherwise, it disturbs the population. Jacques. The people need the word. They're thirsty for it. Gutman. What are these creatures? Mendicants, prostitutes, thieves, and petty vendors in a bazaar where the human heart is a part of the bargain. Jacques. Because they need the word, and the word is forbidden. Gutman. The word is said in pulpits and at tables of council where its volatile essence can be contained. But on the lips of these creatures, what is it? A wanton incitement to riot without understanding. For what is a brother to them but someone to get ahead of, to cheat, to lie to undersell in the market? Brother, you say to a man whose wife you sleep with. But now, you see, the word has disturbed the people and made it necessary to invoke martial law. Meanwhile, the dreamer has brought the survivor to La Madrecita, who is seated in the cement rim of the fountain. She has cradled the dying man in her arms in the attitude of a pieta. The dreamer is crouched beside them, softly playing a guitar. Now he springs up with a harsh cry. The dreamer. Muerto. The street cleaner's piping commences at a distance. Gutman seizes the phone again. Gutman into phone. Generalissimo. The survivor is no longer surviving. I think we'd better have some public diversion right away. Put the gypsy on. Have her announce the fiesta. Loudspeaker, responding instantly. Damas y caballeros. The next voice you hear will be the voice of the gypsy. Gypsy, over loudspeaker. Oi! Noche de fiesta. Will restore the virginity of my daughter. Gutman. Bring on the gypsy's daughter, Esmeralda. Show the virgin to be. Esmeralda is led from the gypsy stall by a severe duenna nursing out upon the forestage. She is manacled by the wrist to the duenna. Her costume is vaguely Levantine. Guards are herding the crowd back again. Gutman. Ha-ha, ho-ho-ho-ho, music. There is gay music. Rosita dances. Abdullah, you're on. Abdullah skips into the plaza, shouting histrionically. Abdullah. Tonight the moon will restore the virginity of my sister Esmeralda. Gutman. Dance, boy. Esmeralda is led back into the stall. Throwing off his burnous, Abdullah dances with Rosita. Behind their dance, armed guards force La Madrecita and the dreamer to retreat from the fountain, leaving the lifeless body of the survivor. All at once, there is a discordant blast of brass instruments. Kilroy comes into the plaza. He is a young American vagrant about 27. He wears dungarees and a skivvy shirt, the pants faded nearly white from long wear and much washing, fitting him as closely as the clothes of sculpture. He has a pair of golden boxing gloves slung about his neck, and he carries a small duffel bag. His belt is ruby and emerald, studded with the word champ champ in bold letters. He stops before a chalked inscription on a wall downstage, which says, "Kilroy is coming." He scratches out "coming," and over it prints, "Here." Gutman. Ho ho! A clown. The eternal Punchinella. That's exactly what's needed in a time of crisis. Block 3 on the Camino Real.